Hello, greetings, salutations, whatever you want to call it. Let's get into it. Davey here with episode 7 of the DarkspiderCast, and there's a specific and very important reason as to why I am just rushing and speeding right into this episode with the intro and pleasantries, because it is going to be a very brief intro segment of the entire podcast, considering that this could potentially be the longest one. It could be the longest one ever because we got a lot to go through in a way that I knew it was going to be a substantial enough episode, but at the very last second, Nintendo and Sony with PlayStation decided to bring forward their guns in the form of a surprise 1-2 punch of a direct and state of play earlier in the week. And we got to talk about those. We undoubtedly need to talk about those. But that's already on top of the stuff that we have to talk about that did happen on last week's pretty much eventful kind of weekend lead up with that was a Ubisoft Forward, so that has to be covered as well. But more importantly, D23 Expo went down last weekend, not this one, but last one, and that brought forth a lot of trailers, some of which were released to the public online, and then others that were actually behind closed doors, and were kind of talked about on the hush-hush at the actual expo to kind of entice people to actually go. So we have all that good stuff covered. So because of that, as well as, of course, our review of She-Hulk Episode 4, not 5. I know that 5 is already out there and people are kind of talk about it. I mean, quite honestly, based on what Episode 5 really is about, are we really missing much here? I don't think that we really are. So, that could wait. All right, it's already a meaty enough episode. That could legitimately just wait. Screw it, So because of that, we're just going to get right into it. And I'm also going to go ahead and sandwich in the What I've Been Playing segment into this intro. So, and quite honestly, I don't feel too bad about it because on the outside portion of things, outside of content creation, as far as like just my life and things like that, nothing really eventful happened. Nothing worth really talking about on the podcast, to be quite frank and honest. I've just been content creating. I've just been trying to pump out more videos. McFarlane keeps turning things around and saying, "Hey, look, a brand new Batman." So, just kind of looking around and seeing what makes the great content and kind of pivoting, and also, making sure that content is going up in time for Batman Day. Happy Batman Day, or belated Batman Day if you're already listening to this after the fact. It was on September 17th, Saturday, either when this episode goes live or a while before or a while after, depending on when you're listening. But I undoubtedly will be celebrating by finally watching Mask of the Phantasm because I haven't seen it. Possible review. Don't think there's going to be a reaction, or I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'll put that up for a reaction. I'm just gestating things. But let's go ahead and move on to what I've been playing, which honestly is just one game, and that is last week's game as well, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Arceus or Arceus. And the other reason is because this is all that I was trying to get wrapped up leading up to the eventful weeks of this past week. So that's what I knew it was going to be a meaty enough episode, a meaty enough game. It's technically speaking a JRPG, so I knew that this was something that if I'm not consecrating, I'm going to be putting some hours into the stuff and putting into the little bit of grindiness. And not only because of what I talked about and kind of delved into on last week's episode when I was talking about the questing, the design, the way that you have to do these remedial tasks in order to earn research points that then will help you build up your character, build up this, and that. And that's why I was like, there's an awful lot of conflicting ideas. Well, I finally wrapped up Pokemon Legends Arceus this week. I saw credits, and officially I beat the game. Unofficially, there are some post-game content that you can dive into should you want to at least, just kind of wiggle a little bit more out of the game. And technically speaking, I am doing that only because, guys, I don't know how else to put this, but I think that the next game is going to be Elden Ring. Like, I just don't see it any other way because I'm trying to think of other games that I can play before that. And I feel like the time that we have now, between now and quote-unquote Broketober, when a lot of shit is dropping, and considering that now I might have removed Splatoon 3 from my list only because all the reviews, despite being good, are all saying one common little phrase that kind of put me off a little bit, which is that It's not really that different from Splatoon 2, so that was enough for me to be like, well, I think that can wait. I might still play it this year, but that can wait. It's not officially a day one. And right now, as I see it, there's no day ones until October 18th at the earliest with Plague Tale Requiem. That's almost a whole month from now. And that's a month that could be nonstop Elden Ring. So that's why I didn't really want to push anything forward or squeeze anything in. So I figured to myself, okay, I will be playing this post-game content. Right now, I'm not seeing anything that's remarkable about it, nothing that's kind of capturing me about it. The same way that the core game really did do, even all the way up to the end credits. Because the overall summary that I have, the feelings that I have with Pokemon Legends Arceus, and why I still stick with what I've said on last week's episode, where I thought that this was probably the final nail in the coffin for me in Pokemon games, is because in case I didn't do a review, or rather a reaction, or a video, or some kind of impression piece, either in podcast form or in video form, is because this was it, guys. This was the game, the Pokemon game that I looked at and went, this looks different. This looks unique. I am legitimately enticed to pick this one up. It took me a little, I was there day one with Pokemon Sword and Shield, but ultimately I did decide that I felt a little burned by that. Burned enough that when Arceus came around, I thought, okay, there's enough unique material, unique aesthetics and content and things going down with this game as far as what the trailers were showing and all that stuff, that made me think, okay, this is different enough for me to actually play through. In the lead up to the release of this game, they did announce Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. That looks generic enough that I haven't even put it on my 2022 list. And I know it's coming out in November, but I legit am not really interested in those games. I'm not. But Arceus was a whole different beast, a whole different story. And so now 25, 26, or 27 or so hours into it, and finally, like I mentioned before, rolling credits, getting this first-hand impression, there's a lot of conflicting ideas. There's a lot of things that are just clashing with one another, where every so often, for one thing that I look at and I go, that is interesting, it's doing this other thing that's either remedial, questionable, or just downright boring. Obviously I already complained about how you have to do all these research tasks, and in order to do so, there's some tasks that require you to use a Pokemon to do a particular action, or you have to have a Pokemon use a specific move one time, but then after a while you have to use it 3 times, then 6 times, then 8 times, then 12, then 25 times to finally max out the page. And certain side quests require you to fill out these pages of tasks to then go to the person and be like, look, I completed the task. All for what? A rare candy. Okay. Whereas in turn, I could just go and level up my Pokemon automatically, which is funny because this game has no XP share. No XP share whatsoever, but yet all my Pokemon still earn all XP even though they didn't fight. On the one hand, I kind of like that, but on the other hand, especially because this game, it's funny. Like I said, a lot of us from the community, with the Pokemon community, were chastising Sword and Shield for being just a little too easy, and you're just kind of coursing through the game and just walking around and hitting A. Pokemon Legends Arceus goes in a completely other side of the spectrum, but the wrong way about it. The right direction, but with the wrong method, if that makes any kind of sense. So it is much more challenging, technically speaking. It is a much more challenging Pokemon game, but with the wrong methodology, in the sense that levels with your Pokemon, I don't know if it's just me, but it virtually just doesn't matter. It almost feels like it doesn't matter. It just matters on what type of Pokemon you play, from a rock, paper, scissors sort of standpoint. There were times, and it works in both directions, sometimes in my advantage and sometimes against me. Sometimes against me where the game is just unfair and it just cheats because, oh, that was a stronger type, but even though I'm much higher level than that other Pokemon, whether it be through a random Pokemon encounter out in the field or through a trainer battle, it kills me even though I'm a higher level than that Pokemon, but because it has a stronger type, that bar, yeah, I expect it to say super effective when the move gets executed, but I don't expect my whole health bar to just disappear in one move. Just one move, okay, an effective blow maybe a little over half the bar, but the whole bar and my Pokemon gets killed. It didn't feel right. And again, works in the opposite direction as well. There's a number of battles that I just quickly got behind me, and I was fully expecting to have to grind out and strategize, only for me to be like, well, my type is stronger, but I'm severely underleveled. And when I say underleveled, I'm talking 7 or 8 levels. I was expecting to not make that much of a dent, and again, same thing happened. One blow. I should be, being all happy over here because I beat the trainer easily, but at the same time, I'm like, it's still fundamentally unbalanced. And like I said, I just feel like these developers, I don't know if maybe they're crunching. Keep in mind, we do have technically 3 Pokemon games amongst all the mobile stuff and service stuff that Pokemon is churning out, that I feel like Pokemon is maybe turning into the Marvel of Nintendo, where there's just too much stuff out there that now so many different quality aspects about these products, about these IPs, are just now suffering. And the reason why Pokemon Legends Arceus is stinging so much more is because it was the one that when I saw the trailers and I saw all the deep dives and all the presentations, it gave me hope. It gave me hope that I was looking at the game and going, yo, this is really reminding me of one of my favorite Pokemon games ever made, Pokemon Colosseum on the GameCube. I love that game. And this game, like I said, there's just so many conflicting things where there's a lot of things that I like. There's some random encounters where I get ambushed by a trainer in a very realistic setting because the game is open. It's an open world. Cool. Too bad that trainer is your stereotypical villain, because for the longest time I was thinking to myself, oh, hey, finally a Pokemon game that doesn't have a forced Team Rocket equivalent. Yeah. Are you sure about that? About 6 or 7 hours in, forgot to mention that on last week's episode, there they are. They're the Fortune Sisters, Misfortune Sisters, something like that. They're pretty much an old school Team Rocket, but they really are. They do the same thing. They even fucking pose. They take up so much time just posing, and even other characters are calling out like, how many times are you going to pose or whatever? And it gets old fast, at least in terms of their impression within the moment. They don't really annoy me enough to interrupt the pacing of the game, but whenever they pop out, I'm like, oh, I forgot you're in here. God damn it, because the game was already doing a good enough job of telling this mysterious story about what's going on with the space-time rift and what's affecting all these Pokemon. Only, like I said, for one strong aspect of the game, there's another weaker one that's just constantly clashing. That's one perfect example amongst many, many others that just makes this game ultimately a mixed bag. I don't hate it, but I can't bring myself to fully unlike it, to go to it feels like it's a game that's probably untouched or unscathed by Pokemon fans. I feel like Pokemon fans will still have enough here to love as far as that collectability of filling out the Pokedex, catching your perfect Pokemon, leveling them up, seeing how cute they get or how strong they become, and becoming a good enough trainer to where you feel kind of badass with some of these moves. But with Pokemon games, because of how long they've been around and how many iterations there have been with console leaps, you expect for a certain degree of innovation, and it almost looks like we were going there with Arceus, but again, it still reins itself back with a handful of other things. And I'm strictly speaking from a design standpoint, because I'm starting to give up on expecting a technical leap as far as visuals or audio, because I feel like by this point Nintendo and Game Freak in partnership would have done it, and because we're still getting these low pixel trees, I don't see things elevating. And judging by some of those trailers for Scarlet and Violet, I don't think they're going to be doing that anytime soon, as long as they're still making that sweet money off the standard body of the Switch. Until we get a Switch Pro, don't expect any more increase in visuals with some of these Pokemon games. As it stands, though, I'm still kind of glad that I got Pokemon Legends Arceus out of the way, as far as getting a 2022 title, experiencing the game, experiencing one of the titles in the Pokemon franchise that I was actually intrigued by. It just didn't pay off the way that I'd want it to. I am still at least somewhat moved or geared to complete this post-game content, but only because, like I said, I just want to use up these last couple of days before my mind is fully prepared to move on to the nightmare that is waiting for me at the other side, which is called Elden Ring. I'm just not there ready. And plus, I haven't opened up my new controller to use it with. So, in the time being, as a kind of secondary thing while I get content and stuff edited, I am trying to wheedle out some of these Pokemon quests, get my fill, and finally put this game to rest. Before we get to those rather beefy meat and potatoes of this potentially gargantuan episode, we do, however, have to follow weekly tradition and talk about She-Hulk, this time for episode 4. I know that probably by the time you're listening to this, episode 5 is already going to be out, and we're actually well enough into the mid-season portion. We even got a little fancy trailer out there that's using a particular fan-favorite character to kind of hook us in. But leading up to that, we did get this 4th episode. And obviously, as I've been mentioning the past couple of weeks, I have not necessarily been the most favorable person towards She-Hulk. And I know that to say that, draws ire, draws particular labels and adjectives towards a person like myself. I don't know why, but I just feel like it's almost against the law to criticize a show like She-Hulk. Like, I've seen some people, I've seen, some things being said from all walks of life that really do make it seem like if you criticize She-Hulk, you're going to be kind of boxed in to a certain demographic. And I'm over here like, okay, I guess I'm part of that demographic, even though I got factual traits that prove otherwise. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen some YouTube videos where there's comments on those videos saying, yeah, if you don't like She-Hulk because you think it hates men characters, you're a creep. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm a creep. I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? Because here we are into episode 4, and I still stand that the show does legitimately bash male characters, save for one. 2, unofficially, if you want to look at that lawyer who's actually kind of nice to Jennifer and people know, it's the guy that came up with that little introductory basket and it has a little card for the best bathroom to poop. He was a charming character, but he's being heavily underutilized. Look at that, an episode and he's gone. And he's hardly ever there. He's just kind of on the offbeats. In terms of predominant, male characters, the show still continues, and I've accepted that the show it really is being made to talk shit about guys. And you know what? I'm not even mad about it anymore. I'm just like, well, I've accepted it. That's what the show's doing. Because you can't convince me otherwise that it's not. Because literally every single male character that has ever appeared on She-Hulk is a douchebag, an asshole, sleazy, misogynistic scumbag, or an idiot. And the only exception is Wong. And people have used Wong as an excuse to be like, see, it's not hating on every male character. Wong is awesome, right? And I'm like, yeah, Wong is awesome. He's also a pre-established character prior to She-Hulk, all right? Ever since 2016 in the original Doctor Strange, okay? And because of that legacy, because of that lineage, I'm pretty certain Kevin Feige made the conditions clear that, hey, you can talk shit about all the men you want, but leave Wong out of it. Leave Wong and potentially leave Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil, out of it. Because those were pre-established characters. Any original male character you want to throw in there, go ahead and make them assholes. That's what it's seeming like. I mean, here we have episode 4, and Jen tries to date. A handful of almost every single guy that she dates is an asshole, and even the one that looked to be nice ends up walking out on her the next morning because she retreated to Jen status. Even though you can make the argument that maybe she should have shown the Jen status. I mean, she did mention that she had to transform in the courtroom, and he was like, yeah, that must have been tough. And she did drop the hints that she can transform back and forth, but not at the same time seeing it from his perspective. I mean, imagine, and I'm talking to everybody here. I'm talking to men, women, non-binaries. I don't care who you are. Anybody. Imagine going home one evening with someone, and then the next morning they cut their hair, or they do something drastically to their appearance. It's not, even if the appearance looks better, it still kind of strikes you as odd. Like they change up at the drop of a hat. You know what I'm saying? Like it speaks about their character in a way where you're like, this is kind of weird. You know what I'm saying? Or not even about their appearance, but about something about maybe the way they talked or the way that their house was or just something. These are the red flags that people are always talking about. So, but immediately people are like, oh, what? The guy's an asshole. He just walked down on her. I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, now removing all those aspects from the show, there is the theory to be had about that guy. People are theorizing, and it's a sound theory, that this guy is in cahoots with the Wrecking Crew from the prior episode that were trying to do something with She-Hulk, and maybe he might have gotten it through these rather adult means, if you will. and you know what's funny is that Jen dating and then, spending the night with that guy, honestly, I'm down for that. I'm down for her exploring her sexuality and to be like, what can this, She-Hulk being or this She-Hulk aspect of me can kind of do. That I did feel was empowering. And that's a perfect segue to say that despite still all the men bashing that you still have in this episode, that, like I said, I've accepted. I don't even get all that mad about it anymore. It shows up on the screen and I'm like, oh, there it is. Tallied up. Oh, well, moving on. I actually like this episode the most. I will probably say this was a significant improvement because outside of the dating aspect and what they were doing with the men, it has this whole other half of the episode that, to me, for the first time in 4 fucking weeks and 4 episodes, was genuinely fun for She-Hulk. For this show, She-Hulk, I actually had fun watching an aspect of the episode. And yes, you can make the argument that it's because it heavily involves Wong, but it involves Wong in a case that actually fits the comedic stylings and the comedic angle that the show was taking, which is dealing with this wannabe magician using the advantages of the mystic arts to his advantage. Because there's bound to be at least one bad egg out there who goes to Carmitage and says, "Ooh, I can, make money off of this." Of course, that's bound to happen. We kind of got a brief glimpse of someone doing that for their own personal gain, except it wasn't monetary. It was just to kind of play sports and be, all flashy in front of his friends, which was, I can't remember the character, Pendragon. His last name was Pendragon. I can't remember his first name, but Benjamin Bratt's character from the first Doctor Strange, the one that gets his powers taken away at the end in the end credit scenes by Mordo, he was kind of doing a much more neutered down version of what Donnie Blaze is doing here. Plus, there's gotta be, I would actually be down if maybe somewhere down the line there's an end credit scene that shows Donnie Blaze saying, "Oh yeah, I got my name from this other guy riding a motorcycle. I just thought I'd change the first letter and boom, that's my stage name." I wouldn't be surprised if they go that angle. But at the same time, I don't want them to Matt Boner it, if you get my drift from fucking WandaVision. Outside of that, though, like I said, this whole aspect of Wong suing this guy for malpractice and the back and forth, it was actually kind of funny. And that made it all the more surprising to witness how much I was digging Madison, with a Y, but not where'd you think. Yeah, guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but as soon as she appeared, I'm like, I'm about to get annoyed by this character. And then the longer it went on, I was liking her. I was liking her. I was liking her more than Jen. How can this possibly be? From a comedic standpoint, at least, maybe not from a character development standpoint or from an appearance standpoint, but just in terms of, how she fits into the show. But in terms of comedic timing and substance, I was liking Madison the most out of this entire episode. Yes, I actually genuinely liked her, and I think what also helped me like her more is her dynamic with Wong. Whenever her and Wong interact, the chemistry was actually very much there, that I was like, yeah, I actually am having fun with this angle of the episode. And so her literally dropping in on him with a beating heart in her hand, and her being kind of nonchalant about it, and then spoiling The Sopranos for both Wong and me, because I still haven't watched that show. And then her testimony, there was just something about the timing and the actual writing of some of these jokes that landed, that actually got me to laugh. I was audibly chuckling. It wasn't like laugh out loud, my sides busting necessarily, but there was just enough there, enough of a morsel of comedy that the other 3 episodes lacked, that I was like, it was like finding an oasis in the desert. I'm sorry. I know I know that that's a very potentially drastic metaphor or simile, I guess, because I technically used the word like, but it really did feel like that. That it was just so dry out here as far as actual jokes that worked and comedy moments that worked, that to find something that really worked on screen for me with Madison and her chemistry with Jen and Wong, seeing the 3 of them trying to get this testimony out to win their case or to try to at least recess it there in towards the end, leading up to a battle with these CG little demons. It was actually fun, and watching Wong and Jen collaborate, and I'm hoping that it actually gave me a glimmer of hope that her collaboration with Wong makes her go, okay, there's some good that I can do in this form outside of just lawyering. I can actually do the superhero thing, and maybe I'm getting a taste for it that I actually kind of liked, and maybe that will then lead her to collaborate with Matt Murdock and be like, you know what, I can dig with this. She gets her uniform, she actually, and that would actually kind of connect with her, Matt's little, what it seems to be his little monologue at the bar, teased by that trailer that was recently released for the mid-season dive into the show, that hey, there's more good that you can do out there outside of just lawyering, pretty much, which what he essentially is doing as well. And so yeah, there was actually more to extrapolate from this episode than in 3 episodes before. And another thing that helped is that sadly this new version of quote-unquote Abomination was not necessarily factored into the equation. We didn't really get too much of a phantom character, as I like to call it, like Tatiana, saying that, oh, Tatiana's doing this and that, but she's just kind of in the background. At least until the end here, where apparently she's suing her for copyright infringement on the name, which I'm like, okay, whatever. That's, so to speak, a teaser or a cliffhanger. But so far, I'm feeling like cliffhangers are not necessarily the show's biggest strong suits, because honestly, I'm like, okay, whatever. But on the bright side, like I said, there was enough to walk away from this episode that actually brought the words fun and funny and laughter out of me when it came to giving impressions and thoughts, either right after me and the girlfriend were done watching the episode, or me here during this segment. That it's enough for me to go, yes, finally, water. You know what I'm saying? Going back to my analogy. Not much more I can really talk about, because that's kind of the overall breakdown of the episode. Again, these are still being maintained to be rather short, so there's not a whole lot to chew on except for like the main bullet points, but at least I can proudly say that the bullet points were strong enough here to actually give a somewhat positive review to a She-Hulk episode, minus, like I said, the traditional men bashing here, where it's just so exaggerated to the point where I'm like, even sexist assholes in real life, they can't possibly be saying some things like this here, right? Which is crazy, because it made me think of another hypothetical, and I think I might have mentioned this already in last week's episode. I can't remember if it was during the podcast on last week's episode, in episode 3, when I was talking about episode 3, or if I just said this to my girlfriend off mic or off camera or whatever, but it just kind of harkens back to what I mentioned before about how one of the writers here, it comes from Rick and Morty, and how maybe the reason why the humor in Rick and Morty works possibly with that writer is because it's an animated show, and this is trying to be a live action animated show or a live action sitcom, and maybe if we were dealing with an animated She-Hulk show, the jokes might land a little easier, everything will be just much more simpler to swallow, or maybe if something doesn't work, it could be kind of modified versus in terms of maybe delivering the joke faster, cutting away, or making certain characters act a little faster because they're animated. You can manipulate the models, and maybe that would have worked for a overall much cleaner show. But with live action, obviously, whatever you shoot, whenever you're shooting it, is ultimately what you have to work with. And after that point, it's up to the editors and the producers and the directors to be in the editing floor and be like, okay, what can we work with? And maybe that's why I was having trouble with those first 3 episodes. I was finally here with 4 that we are starting, at least I'm personally starting to finally see some hope in the show maybe getting better and raising the stakes and maybe getting me to like Jen. I'm still not liking Jen as much as the show would like for me to like her, but at least there's elements that can maybe make the show shine a little better. And going into the mid-season premiere, at least, like I said, it's just a morsel to chew on for me to go, all right, well, it's still within that tier of catching it whenever me and the girlfriend get back, hang out together again, and we're in front of the TV and we can witness it. And hopefully I'll bring you guys a really good review for episode 5 next week. But at the same time, I just do not want to get ahead of myself. All right, let's get started, folks. All right, so one of the things that went down as part of that storm that I was warning all of you from last week's episode, it was actually going to be D23, the D23 Expo that went on from September 9th to September 11th, timely. And so there was quite an awful lot shown and talked about at the Expo, but admittingly, not a whole lot of it was shown to the general public when actually, kind of outside of the confines of the Expo. So I am going to kind of breeze a little bit through some of these things because, like I said, some of the stuff was just shown on the ground floor. Some of it was quite literally some announcements to talk about projects that most of us were already knowing were in development, and maybe they were just kind of confirming some things that we were already speculating. And then there were some other legitimate surprises that we're looking at and going, wow, that's actually kind of cool that it's coming down the pipeline. And then others we're literally looking at and going, okay, this is very emblematic that Disney is not interested in remaking anything that you generally want remade. They want to remake what works, which from a business angle makes logical sense, but from an actually creative and desirable standpoint, we're all just scratching our heads going, what the hell are you doing? Anyways, let me start off by some of the quick stuff that I'm definitely going to breeze through, which frankly, this sounds a little on the meaner side, but it is kind of true. I want to talk about the direct Disney, like actually Disney stuff and Pixar stuff, and as far as animation, as far as Disney properties that are inherently from them. So basically anything that's not Marvel or Star Wars, essentially. So here we have at the top of the headline, and these are all going to be breakdowns, quick and brief breakdowns over from IGN, because IGN had a little hub on their homepage that pretty much broke down the entirety of the D23 Expo in one clean kind of carousel. And so I figured, you know what, this is probably going to be the way to go. Other websites, they kind of have it all sporadic right now. So this is pretty much where I'm going to be extracting it from. At the top of the Disney and Pixar D23 Everything Shown article, we have Inside 2 is announced. Via Pixar's Twitter, it says, "Oh joy, Amy Poehler is back to star in Inside Out 2, directed by Kelsey Mann, produced by Mark Nelson, and written by Meg Lefebvre. Disney and Pixar's Inside Out releases summer 2024. So an Inside Out 2 is getting a sequel. Directly from the article here, the movie will once again take place inside of Riley's head, and with all the emotions from the original returning for the sequel. The movie is very early in production, but it's coming on summer 2024. Why? This is, in my opinion, one of the first big whys. But why? Like Ryan Reynolds says in that GIF. Because, I guess there's wiggle room for a sequel if you want, because Riley was pretty young in her preteen years in the first one, so this could probably be exploring her teenage going into, I don't want to say adulthood, but kind of like maybe her high school years where maybe she's about to graduate and her emotions are just kind of getting the better of her. But at the same time, that at the ending of that first Inside Out was just so clean that getting an Inside 2, it's like, why? That's ultimately the question. Now, to be devil's advocate once more, we also didn't know why Toy Story was getting not only 1, 2, but 3 sequels, and all 3 of those sequels are awesome. You can make the argument of whether 3 is better than 4, or 4 was necessary. I argue that 4 is completely unnecessary, but it was still a very good animated movie. 3 is still the best and had the perfect ending, which is why 4 retroactively ended up being kind of unnecessary, but at least it was still, if you can tell that 4 was still made with care. It wasn't just it really didn't feel like a cash grab. You get the impression that it's going to be, but then you watch the movie and you go, wow, this is actually caring for the source material. This is actually caring for the characters and doing things with them, from a screenwriting standpoint. So it's cool. It's cool. So if Inside 2 can kind of take some pages from that book, it would be greatly appreciated. We get the announcement of a movie called Wish coming over from Disney Animation, so the company behind like Frozen, Wreck-It Ralph, Moana, etc. To close the show, so we're kind of skipping ahead here, Disney announced Wish, a new original film coming next year. The movie is designed to celebrate 100 years of Disney storytelling with original characters and songs inspired by Disney's legacy. It will explore how the wishing star came to be. It will take place in a fairy tale kingdom that existed long before any other Disney world called the Kingdom of Wishes. Let's see. So it pretty much coming out. It's coming next year? Yeah, a new original film coming in 2023. That's another thing that's also coming to mind is that an awful lot of Disney movies that are coming out either in the next couple of months to all throughout 2023 are going to have that 100 years kind of logo to celebrate the centennial anniversary of pretty much all of Disney productions of when everything got kind of kicked off by the original Walt Disney, as well as all his animators and everything that kind of stemmed from that. Pixar announces new alien sci-fi movie, Elio. Elio is a new sci-fi movie, I get it, Elio, from Pixar about a young boy who becomes Earth's ambassador for what is essentially the United Nations of Aliens. He then has to prove that the best part of being human is being yourself. The movie is coming in spring 2024, and it stars America Ferrera as Olga Solis and Jonas Kibriv as Elio. And along with that, they just showed off a little bit of concept art. Of course, it's far off, early in development, so nothing else was really shown except for that initial announcement. Walt Disney Animation Studios partnering with Outside Studio for Iwaju. Iwaju is a new animated series set in Africa, and it marks the first collaboration with an outside studio in 100 years. The project, so an actual collaborative process. It's kind of like whenever you see like Universal and 20th Century Fox making movies together on occasion, this is Disney actually fucking finally doing that. The project is described as a love letter to Nigeria with the intent of showing why Lagos is one of the most unique cities in the world. It will tell the story of a wealthy heiress and a poor boy. Iwaju is set to arrive in 2023, and similar to the prior announcements, we got a little bit of artwork here via the tweet on Disney Plus's original on Twitter account. So it's going to be streaming in 2023. Pixar shares details on first original long-form series, Win or Lose. So Pixar is finally getting into the series game because, Disney Plus, of course, why not? Win or Lose is an upcoming animated series from Pixar. The show is a baseball-themed animated series focusing on a team called the Pickles. In their run up to the championship game, each episode will focus on a different character, from Frank the umpire to the tough guy pitcher before finishing with the championship game. Spoilers, I guess. Will Forte will voice Coach Dan in the series. An exclusive clip showed Frank trying to ask a woman out for coffee before being turned down. So pretty much a League of Their Own style of show, kind of like how Prime is actually doing in and of themselves, except with the Pixar flavor to it. Elemental 2023 Pixar movie gets first trailer. Cast announced. The Good Dinosaur director Peter Sun is tackling Elemental, a new Pixar film coming in June 2023. At the D23 showcase, we get a look at the first trailer for the movie. So they showed a trailer, but it did not get released to the public. The movie is set in a big city and follows Ember, a fiery character, and Wade, a chill water character. Getting kind of thirsty now. As they discover the similarities and despite their differences. Leia Lewis will play Ember, with Mamadou Athie will play Wade. In an exclusive look at the showcase, Pixar, and I also like that they're using lesser known voices. They're going the opposite direction of movies like fucking Minions or whatever, where they're using people that are genuinely talented, but they're not known, to just give them a little bit more of a spotlight of what they can do. I like that. In an exclusive look at the showcase, Peter showcased a scene of the two learning a bit about each other as they walked through Element City. The only little thing, because I saw the poster for this as well, and the only little curmudgeon I have is that this feels like it's very similar to Inside Out, except not with emotions, but with elements. But I'm scared that it's going to be kind of tackling the same themes. You get what I'm saying? And then we get to what is pretty much, amongst Twitter at least, the first major bombshell. First footage of the Little Mermaid live-action remake. The first public teaser for the Little Mermaid live-action remake showed glimpses of Ariel, fish, turtles, and ocean waves. Beyond that, the in-person audience got to see the full sequence for Part of Your World, the most iconic song from the original Little Mermaid animated film. Prior to today, we had only seen one image from the set of the movie, which showed Halle Bailey, not Halle Berry, because some people are legit are getting confused on Twitter. Like, how could you... Anyways, even it's so baffling that I think the real Halle Berry tweeted, like, what are you, like, she tweeted some memes saying, how can you confuse me for her? Like, just because we're black. Like, how, come on. It's a legit typo, for some of you. The Little Mermaid also stars Jacob Tremblay as Flounder, Aquafina as Scuttle, Jesus Christ, Melissa McCarthy as the evil Ursula, Javier Bardem as King Triton, and more. So I did see this trailer. Me and the girlfriend caught wind of the trailer. Okay, so I do argue that there is obviously there's two discourses going on Twitter. One that is ultimately stupid, which is, of course, Ariel being black. Let's be honest. It's about Ariel being black, and I'm over here going, she's a mermaid. A mythological creature. Just fucking get over it. The other discourse I can honestly do kind of empathize with, which is simply just how it's showing those signs that are very unnerving, which is the whole live action remake fatigue that a lot of people are genuinely starting to feel. I mean, we just recently got Pinocchio on Disney Plus, and a lot of people coming back saying, yeah, that movie feels very lifeless. It just feels like a live action render of the original 1940 beautifully animated original. And it looks like a lot of people are arguing the same thing about this Little Mermaid remake, because there's certain shots about the environment, as far as like the ship graveyard and the underwater shots and the cave that she swims up, that just look rather uninspired. They the lighting is muted down, colors are desaturated, and yet you look at the 89 movie. I've seen the side-by-side comparisons, and I do agree. There's shots where I'm like, look at the animation. Like you can respect the animation. Meanwhile, the trailer is just like, yeah, let's just CG it. Extra lighting, extra color to get elaborate and creative with the color schemes to make it look like a oil pastel painting. Nah, we don't have time for that. Yeah, it's rather disappointing to kind of see how things are going with these live action remakes versus with movies that nobody asked to remake for. Meanwhile, Atlantis and Treasure Planet are quite literally drowning over there, both metaphorically and potentially even quite literally. So the one thing though that I feel like a lot of people should relax about is, in fact, this young actress, Halle Bailey, I almost said it, Halle Bailey as Ariel. Because not only in the teaser trailer that was released to the public, but I will confess, I did see what is ultimately some bootleg footage of the Part of Your World number that was shown to the public inside of the D23 Expo. And yeah, she can definitely belt it, and I feel like she's going to be able to hold her own from a singing standpoint. Like, even I had to raise my eyebrows and be like, oh shit. Oh, yeah, and some people even in the audience, you can hear some reactions go, whoa. So I'm definitely not worried about her as far as nailing those numbers and hitting those high notes. It definitely feels different. Some people are arguing on Twitter again about her being better than Jodie Benson, and I'm like, nah, it's just different. They're both commendable. Jodie Benson is able to get that naive charm that Ariel's kind of in and over her head as far as this big world that she's trying to brave into, whereas Halle Bailey is able to hit those high notes and just deliver that wow, that showy wow factor that, if you're going to be doing live action, own the frame. You know what I'm saying? It looks like she's going to be able to do that. So I'm definitely not worried about her. I'm more worried about just the interpretation of everything around her as far as the environments, the writing. Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. I mean, it's funny. It says right here, Melissa McCarthy as the evil Ursula. I don't think evil when I think of Melissa McCarthy, okay? If you have seen Thor Love and Thunder, yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're just a couple of degrees away from that, which is a shame because we know Melissa McCarthy can act, especially when she's not in a movie directed by her husband. We know she can act. So, I don't know. We'll see. But that's not all. That's not all. It keeps on. I'm going to go through a bit of a lightning round here, guys, because we got still a lot to cover, and I don't want to drag on the point. But we get live-action remake after unnecessary live-action remake after unnecessary prequel to unnecessary live-action remake. I didn't think we can get this fucking meta with it. A prequel to the live-action 2019 Lion King movie called Mufasa, The Lion King, is getting made. Coming out in 2024. Why? I don't know. It's supposed to show Mufasa becoming king, but who asked for that? Now, the only little level of intrigue, little grain of interest taken away from this project is that Moonlight director Barry Jenkins is going to be directing. So part of me wants to say, oh, that is interesting. He's an amazing director. Let's see what he can do with it. But likewise, you know who directed that 2019 live-action remake? Jon fucking Favreau, who brought us Iron Man, and even a commendable Jungle Book remake. Only for it to just seem like nothing when he made Lion King. Lion King didn't feel like it was directed by him. It didn't. All right? Mandalorian feels more like it was made by Favreau than Lion King did. And because of that, I'm like, you know, are these just directors for hire? I mean, you can hire all these big name directors all you want. I feel like at the end of the day, it's Disney coming in saying, nah, make it like this. And that worries me. Moving on here, we're getting a live action Snow White, 2024. Speaking of big name directors, Mark Webb, who did Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, as well as a handful of other coming of age movies that are very well made, is making a live action Snow White. Or what is it? A third live action Snow White? Because haven't we already gotten like 2 or 3? Like there was the Julia Roberts Mirror Mirror, and then there was the Snow White and the Huntsman. God damn it. Anyways, Rachel Zegler from West Side Story is going to be doing. She's going to be playing Snow White, and Gal Gadot is going to be the evil queen. I'm telling you, like these movies feel like they're being made by AI, not by actual humans. Moving on, first look at Disney's Peter Pan and Wendy, which is coming to Disney Plus in 2023, and we get a poster. And it looks like I think people at the expo might have gotten a first look at the film itself. Again, a couple of names in there, but personally, I don't care. I really don't care. A new trailer for the Haunted Mansion movie, or is it a movie or a show? No, it's a movie. Is the next Disney film based on the theme park ride, and we got a first clip at the expo, but of course this was not shown to the public itself. It shows off the mansion, shots of the building, maps of the house, and the discovery of a secret passageway. The characters also find old barrels which lead to a fire starting. The trailer also shows multiple glimpses of Danny DeVito and Owen Wilson. Oh, that sounds charming. The cast also includes Winona Ryder. Okay, Winona Ryder in a Haunted Mansion movie feels like it fits. And Dan Levy. I would even go as far as including Dan Levy in there. And maybe even Danny DeVito. It sounds like a Tim Burton Wonder Dream. But when you throw in Owen Wilson, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I feel like with the right cast and director, this would have been a cool little revamp for the Haunted Mansion. It could have been like the Pirates of the Caribbean equivalent to the Haunted Mansion, but to try to get us to forget about the Eddie Murphy movie, I don't know about that. We did get a trailer for both the public inside of D23 as well as public online of Disenchanted. That actually looks kind of interesting considering the slight little twists that it mildly spoils, but at the same time I feel like they needed to spoil in order to get us to be interested in the trailer, that things are not looking all that great for the main character here. I can't remember her name, but she's played by Amy Adams. Oh, Giselle. Where it's continuing from the first one, but she looks like she's getting caught up in her desire to make everything very fairy tale perfect, to the point where maybe she might be the bad guy. But we'll see, because personally I feel like there's going to be a bigger villain that's going to get her to snap out of it. She's going to turn back into good. That's my theory, but whatever. And then we finally got a full-blown trailer, not a teaser, but an actual official trailer for Hocus Pocus 2, which is dropping on Disney Plus later this month, September 30th. A first official trailer at least, not a teaser, but a first official trailer, just 2.5 weeks prior to the movie dropping. And after watching the trailer, I finally understand why. I gotta be honest, guys. Hocus Pocus 2 doesn't look all that good. It really, really doesn't. I don't know what it is about it, but there's just something about it that feels like the type of movie where you can tell like the three actresses coming back, Sarah Jessica Parker, Bette Midler, and Kathy Najimy, they look like they're having fun, but that's because they're with each other, not because they're making a good movie. You get what I'm saying? Everything else looks like a Disney Channel original movie. It really does. And if you don't believe me, ask my girlfriend, because as soon as we were done with the trailer, she was not hyped. If anything, she was on the verge of crying, going, yeah, this doesn't look good. And she's like, oh, like she was physically in pain to the point where I'm like, are you really hurting from something? And she's just like, no, I hate that you're right. This doesn't look all that impressive. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, babe. We're still, we got Disney Plus, so we're probably going to watch it regardless. But, Hocus Pocus is one of her favorite Halloween movies ever. Arguably her favorite, actually. And so to see the sequel kind of taking some things and possibly tampering with them, it kind of broke her heart a little bit. So we'll see. Hopefully it's a badly cut trailer, but what we're seeing is not impressing us whatsoever. But that pretty much does it for the Disney-centric and Pixar stuff. Of course, now we got to move on to the juggernauts, Marvel and Star Wars. There is going to be one slight little caveat as I unfold into the Marvel and Star Wars, and I guess 20th Century Studios or whatever they're calling it, 20th Century Fox stuff, from D23. The caveat, well, there's two, although one is very, very minor. And that is that there are some trailers that were revealed, or at least some stuff that was talked about, but I am not going to get into because unfortunately it deals with spoilery stuff that I'm not ready to get into for myself. Honestly, it's just one. We'll cover it here at the very beginning. But the other is that there was an awful lot that, like I mentioned before, it was shown behind closed doors, so I'm just going to breeze right through it because there's really not much that can really be kind of extracted from that and really talk about it and really create content for that. So let's go ahead and break down this IGN article that pretty much lists everything announced at the Marvel, Star Wars, and 20th Century Studios Showcase. And at the very beginning here is the one that I mentioned, the one little asterisk, which is that the Mandalorian Season 3 trailer was debuted at D23 to show what is going down with the Mandalorian and Grogu and all those things that are going to be coming to us in 2023. The third season is going to be debuting next year, and we got our first look with this trailer, which is available to the public, as well as the D23 Expo where it debuted first. Now, again, this is the one that unfortunately I'm just going to have to move on from because I still have not seen Season 2, so I've not seen this trailer. And it's funny because my friend asked me if I have seen it. Oh, no, I'm sorry, no, the opposite. I told my friend Greg that it's up when it first broke that morning. And he said that he knew he was going to check it out later because I think he was working or something. He was doing something. He told me, however, like, you have not caught up yet. And I'm like, nah, I've seen Season 1, have not started Season 2. It's actually one of my next shows to start on my backlog list of shows to watch. And he said, yeah, good. Do not watch the trailer. It's actually spoiler city for all over the place as far as Season 2 and even, I think, Book of Boba Fett. So I'm like, all right. Good. Thanks for the warning, and thankfully I did not watch the trailer. So we are going to have to move on to a trailer that I did watch, Secret Invasion. So try not to get into a mind state that could break my heart with this trailer because of where we're at in terms of the current state of Marvel Studios and how divisive things are right now with Thor: Love and Thunder, She-Hulk, all of the stuff that's really going down as far as the saturation, as far as the fatigue that people are feeling with Marvel Studios. But I cannot deny that there is really some eyebrow-raising intrigue going down with the Secret Invasion trailer. It's a quick trailer that shows Nick Fury finally coming down to Earth, but he is looking serious. He doesn't look like he's on the same vacation-y mood that he was at the end of, what was it, Far From Home? I think it was the last time that we saw him there. Yeah, it was Far From Home, where he was on, it looked like he was on the beach, but it turns out that he was up in space. But it doesn't look like he's pleased to come back. It actually looks like he's heavily concerned with what's going down on Earth and the Skrulls. Outside of that, there's not much more that we know except that Ben Mendelsohn and Martin Freeman are coming back, so that's awesome because I love those two in their roles, and it's cool to see that they're being incorporated there. It looks like there's a conversation between between Fury and Rhodey at a bar, so it looks like Rhodey's put in charge, and I feel like something out of that conversation is going to lead us into Armored Wars. In terms of him talking about his security detail, I feel like there's going to something heavy could potentially be going down here in Secret Invasion that is going to cause Armor Wars to kind of spark up and make Rhodey go, yeah, I need to be my own version of Tony. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, there's just so much covert stuff going down in this trailer. A lot of flashes of and people in the comment section were saying this looks very Winter Soldier-y in all the right places, in all the right moods. So good to see an awful lot of that. Then we have another trailer for something that looks legitimately interesting, something really creative. In fact, I would argue this is probably the most creatively enticing thing that I've seen come out of Marvel in a really, really good while. And it's actually not too far away, too. It's actually for Halloween. Marvel's what's called Werewolf by Night. It's basically a Halloween special confirmed at D23 with a trailer that debuted. And it's pretty much, like it mentions here on the IGN article, reminiscent of a 1940s horror movie, and shows off the cast in a spooky mansion and a glimpse of the werewolf, who will be played by Gael Garcia Bernal. And it's an adaptation of Werewolf by Night, and it looks crazy. Like, it looks gory, it looks bloody, macabre, but it looks like it's taking, like I said, a lot of creative liberties that look unique. It looks experimental. Like, why not keep trying to do more of this stuff, Marvel? Just don't let it be all too jokey. But there's an awful lot of good faith instilled here by this trailer, especially with an awful lot of those old school techniques like the obviously the black and white, but also the film grain, a little bit of the jitteriness of the film, quote unquote. Even some use of the still frames, like the freeze frames whenever something happens and it's kind of zooming in. It kind of reminds me of those old school trailers from the 50s, 60s, and even 70s. So overall, really impressed by this trailer. I would probably say this is like my highlight of the show as far as the Marvel stuff is concerned. And frankly, that's where it kind of stops as far as what was actually shown to both the public and online for Marvel. The rest was pretty much just a bunch of headlines and highlights of things that were kind of revealed on the ground floor but not shown to the general public, or simply just mere announcements. First of all, we got the official announcement of the roster for the Thunderbolts, including the Winter Soldier, something that a lot of people were not expecting, as well as David Harbour's Red Guardian from Black Widow. A lot of people were already expecting Florence Pugh as Yelena, but also we're getting Taskmaster, so like half of the Thunderbolts is from Black Widow. That I'm hoping that doesn't, they're used charismatically to, work well with the rest of the team, and it doesn't just feel like I'm sorry for Black Widow, because Black Widow, I think almost everybody didn't really like that movie, so I'm hoping that this doesn't just feel like a do-over for the Black Widow movie. But also making up the rest of the roster is Hannah John Kamen's a Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp, as well as U.S. Agent from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I already mentioned Bucky, he's going to be in there. And then, of course, all of them led by Julia Louis-Dreyfus's Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, which is basically the anti-Nick Fury. So that's going to be pretty interesting for the Thunderbolts movie. Loki Season 2 got a first look at D23 with an awful lot of material, including the confirmation that I might be butchering his name, but Ke-Huy Quan, who played Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and then recently was in Everything Everywhere All at Once, and he's becoming a lot of people's favorites. I mean, I like him as well, but he is going to be in Season 2, so that's going to be pretty interesting. A dedicated panel to Daredevil Born Again. More details were revealed, pretty much confirming that it's going to be 18 episodes. Of course, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio took to the stage, and that it's going to be emotional, really emotional, quoting a line here. by Charlie Cox, and a lot of reaffirmation that this is more of a season 1 than a season 4, which on the one hand, it's kind of cool that they're rebooting it and not have to feel constricted and tied to the lingering facts of the ending of season 3, while at the same time being a little concerned that it's going to be adapting that Disney Plus flavor that we've been seeing recently with a lot of the Disney Plus shows, which is we've already kind of reestablished is rather divisive for a lot of people. Speaking of Disney Plus shows, one of them being Ms. Marvel, The Marvels first trailer was revealed at D23. Of course, it wasn't shown to the public, but pretty much the entirety of the cast, as well as director Nia DaCosta, pretty much took to the stage, showing off the trailer, geeking out. I'm not gonna lie, an awful lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff I've been seeing of the three leads, Brie Larson, Imani. God, I'm blanking on her name. I'm sorry, but the girl who played Miss Marvel, and then the girl who played Monica Rambeau. Their chemistry is just bouncing all over the place. So that actually instills me, like I said, some good faith into this movie that it could be legitimately fun. Just make sure you get that writing down, and this could have potential. But of course, I wasn't at D23, so I didn't see that trailer. I also didn't see the trailer for a new trailer for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. A new trailer was shown, but it's funny. I just want to kind of breeze over this one because I can't shake the feeling that this trailer is probably right around the corner. Like, the movie comes out in November. I'm pretty sure that either by the end of this month, beginning of next month, this trailer that was shown at D23, it's going to drop online. So, moving on, Captain America New World Order was shown off at, well, not really shown off, but was talked about at the stage at D23, confirming that the leader, Samuel Stearns, will be returning in the 2024 film after 14 years and will be bringing back Tim Blake Nelson. Cool. We finally get a wrap up behind that Easter egg, because if they had just dropped that, I mean, that's a huge waste. And then Kevin Feige said that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania will directly link to Avengers Kang Dynasty. I mean, we expected it to. He pretty much just kind of reaffirmed this because we knew that Kang was going to be showing up in Ant-Man 3, so it's like, well, of course, why not? And apparently also at D23, they showed off some behind-the-scenes footage and also gave a look at MODOK. But I think there's some leaks out there. Some people did take some photos. I mean, people took leaks of the fucking trailer itself, but I have not watched it because I just don't feel like it does it justice. So, yeah, I kind of bypassed that. That was pretty much it for an awful lot of the Marvel stuff. Before I do move on, actually, no, that's not true. Echo did get a first trailer shown off at the D23 Expo, as well as first footage for Ironheart. But that was it. That was predominantly it for the D23 Marvel stuff. Before we do move on to Star Wars, though, there's a couple of like middle stuff as far as 20th Century Fox properties, or at least what used to be 20th Century Fox properties. Willow got a brand new trailer that also debuted online. I gotta be honest, I didn't watch it. I'm not into Willow like that. I never even seen the original movie, but I know it's getting a resurgence here from the original 88 classic film. Christian Slater's going to be joining the cast. And some of the shots that I've seen, I mean, look interesting, but like I said, I'm not, I'll probably just catch it when it drops on November 30th, but outside of that, I'm not really compelled to really talk much about Willow, to be quite honest. But a little bit more was shown of Avatar: The Way of Water. Apparently there were some clips that show what's at stake at Pandora, and then online on the Disney official Twitter, a little bit of concept art was dropped as well, so a look at that. But to me, the non-Marvel, non-Star Wars related stuff that was shown during these big juggernaut blockbuster conversations that they were having, that was unfortunately not released to the public, but I gotta be honest, I'm highly inquisitive on, is a new trailer, the first ever trailer for Indiana Jones 5, with the one and only Harrison Ford hopping on stage, talking about the trailer, talking about what went down with the making of the movie, getting emotional, and also kind of reminding us how much Harrison Ford loves Indiana Jones. So much more than Han Solo. Every time he talks about Han Solo, he's always kind of like, whatever, usual grumpy Harrison Ford. But whenever he talks about Indiana Jones, he lights up. He goes on about it, and like it showed off at D23, gets kind of emotional at times. He was actually starting to cry. And so they showed off that trailer. He talked about the movie. And I feel like it's just a matter of time before we do get a proper look online of what's waiting for us. And what is being kind of implied could be, or very likely will be, and kind of should be, Harrison Ford's last ride as Indiana Jones. Along with the rest of the cast, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I think is her name. I might be butchering her name. And then directed by James Mangold. That has, I got to be honest, this might sound messed up, but I'm very, very intrigued by an Indiana Jones movie that's not being directed by Spielberg. I feel like there's a part of me that's like, what does an Indiana Jones movie that's not done by Spielberg look like? Let alone someone who kind of already has a dipped into westerns before, James Mangold. 3:10 to Yuma remake, Ford vs. Ferrari, and then what people say is pretty much a comic book adaptation of a western, Logan. So there's a bit of a pedigree there that has me intrigued. Then, with all that out of the way, we then get into the Star Wars stuff. Some stuff that, like I said, we're kind of just briefed on or I'm not caught up on, such as The Bad Batch Season 2 coming in January, being confirmed with 16 episodes. I think they debuted some footage over at D23 with a release date of January 4th. And then we also got the Ahsoka series made a brief appearance at D23, but they didn't technically show new trailer. They just kind of hyped it up. In fact, so much so that Jon Favreau called it Dave Filoni's magnum opus. Okay, calm down there, dude. I don't want us to get burnt, because when the last time they were building something up, it was Robert Rodriguez saying, "Yeah, I'm ready to go," and Book of Boba Fett came out, and people were not really well receptive to that, just saying. So we did have that situation there before. And then, as I mentioned before, we did get Mandalorian Season 3 trailer. And then we have another inquisitive piece that looks really cool. And what's even cooler about it is that it's technically kind of a standalone. It's probably one of those things that you could watch it on its own, but if you watch Clone Wars, you'll probably get some added value out of it, especially because outside of its animation style, it's also its correlation with Ahsoka and young Anakin Skywalker, and that is Tales of the Jedi. Original Shorts got its first trailer, which I did watch. I saw the material. I'm very, very interested and kind of hyped for a young Count Dooku training a young Qui-Gon. That looks legit. It's pretty much a series of 6 original stories that will focus on Ahsoka, Qui-Gon Jinn, Count Dooku, with some what seems to be some cameos from a Mace Windu, Rex from the clones, and then a Yoda sporting a haircut. Like he's got hair. Yoda had hair in those shots. That's one of my great question marks, and it's one that won't take too long to answer, because it's actually dropping next month at the end of October 26th. So I'm actually really, really down for that, as well as a new trailer for Andor. And even though it was a very brief trailer, it kind of reminded me why it is that this is probably the first Star Wars thing in a really long time that I look at and go, yo, this could be legitimately it. What I've been looking for in a Star Wars property ever since it went over to Disney, what I've been looking for Star Wars in a new Disney Plus series, it's Andor. Because, like I mentioned before, it's reminding me of a lot of, cloak and dagger type of stories, spy versus spy, in political espionage, House of Cards type shit, but taking place in the Star Wars universe. And this trailer just was a little more action heavy, especially towards the end with the TIE fighters, and it looks like Andor's kind of navigating and trying to maneuver them. But outside of that, it still has so much back and forth, with characters kind of antagonizing each other, but it's kind of juicing up the drama in a very classic, serialized sort of way, in a way that a show should be. You get what I'm saying? So it built up even more hype, and it doesn't look like we have to wait too long, because it debuts next week, September 21st, not too long ahead of its original release after getting that original delay from last month. But we're getting a 3-episode drop. I think each episode is only going to be about 30 to 40 minutes or so, but 3-episode drop if we can get at least a consistent arc in those first 3 episodes to make us go, okay, I'm down for the remaining, what is it, like 9? I think it's a 12 part series. I think that there could be something really, really special here. And this trailer kind of reinvigorated that a little bit about that. But of course, the pessimistic side of me is still looking at me and going, hey, calm down. We've seen this happen before. You know what that was called? Obi-Wan. Calm down, David. So Disney and Marvel fans were able to eat rather well. Well, I mean, at least with movies and shows. Not so much with the games, because remember, there was that Disney Marvel Games showcase just a day prior to the expo. Prior to D23's expo, there was that first ever Disney and Marvel Games showcase. Oh, God. So this was what? September... Was it September 9th as well? I thought it was September 8th. Oh, no, I'm confusing it. September 8th was with something else. September 9th. So we did get this Disney Marvel showcase, which I was getting kind of hyped for because I had all these speculations of what could be shown. There were things that were confirmed to be making some kind of appearance or be talked about slightly, such as more stuff about the Skywalker saga, potentially an expansion, Marvel Midnight Suns, possibly getting some more further details despite the delay. And also more talk about the recently released Dreamlight Valley that a lot of people are liking on Game Pass. So there was some confirmed stuff, but there were also other things that they were like, oh, other stuff pertaining to Marvel. And I thought just maybe Spider-Man 2. I don't know, definitely not Wolverine, but maybe Spider-Man 2, considering there's a Spider-Man hanging on the poster that was promoting the expo over in Anaheim. So I was like, maybe could be something there. Until I found out that the goddamn showcase was scheduled and clocked to only be 23 minutes. And that's when I realized, no way. It's not going to be here. Spider-Man 2 is not going to be here. So as soon as I dropped those expectations, I thought to myself, well, let's at least check it out. I'm in front of a screen here on my laptop. Let's watch it live and see exactly what unfolds. And to be quite honest, this thing was kind of trash. It really was. And I know it's meant to be like the first ever Disney Marvel, but this is Disney and Marvel that we're talking about. And if you're gonna come out with your first ever inaugural stream, you kind of have to come out swinging because of your fucking name, Disney and Marvel. Like, how can you not? And so what we were dealt with here was a first look at Amy Hennig and Skydance's new game, which has no title. But what we do know is that it's going to be an ensemble game centered on Captain America and Black Panther during World War II. So I'm imagining that this is technically supposed to be the T'Chaka version of Black Panther because it's set in World War II. And we get a CG trailer with an old-time World War II era song, See Me Again, Don't Know When, that song. But the environment then showcases what is effectively Paris during those like bombings when you hear like the sirens in the background and stuff like that. So immediately we got World War II. And if it wasn't for the Marvel logo, I would have thought that maybe it could be hinting at the Indiana Jones game that was announced some time ago. But then we did see the Marvel logo, so we thought everybody in the chat and myself included immediately gravitated towards Captain America. I mean, that's the only logical character that from Marvel's pantheon that's going to be included in World War II. So pretty much we get all of our little details, and eventually we do get to that shield. What I was not expecting is to see the claw marks on the shield that then made me go, whoa, Black Panther? And that's pretty much what it is. We are then left with some artwork at the end that I swear to God, I even made a joke out of it here on Twitter, or over on Twitter. A legit artwork that shows the silhouettes of Black Panther, Captain America, and then a member of the Dora Milaje and a soldier with backgrounds of Wakanda and Paris and during World War II. And this artwork legit looks like some shit out of World of Tanks, the mobile game. To me, that's what it looks like. I'm sorry. All right? I'm sorry if that sounds kind of offensive to anybody, but that's what it looks like to me. It looks like goddamn World of Tanks. I'm expecting the logo for it to either be like World of Tanks, download now. That's what it looked like. And that was it. That's all we know. So I know it's a whiles off. We have yet to look at some gameplay, and Amy Hennig is definitely a capable creator of video games. I mean, for God's sake, she gave us like the definitive franchise with Uncharted 1 through 3. Like, I totally trust her. I just feel like whoever's in charge of marketing this game right now may not be in the best of interest, personally speaking. Anyways, moving on, Midnight Suns got not only a further look into some gameplay, but we also get the announcement that there's going to be a Switch edition and a release date of December 2nd, 2022, which means that technically the game did get delayed, but not by as much as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be full on into spring of 2023, like February or March. But no, it's making it to the end of the year, December 2nd. So it got only about a 2-month delay. And so it looks like it's going to be able to hit the stores. Now, is it going to be a buggy mess? Because what makes me kind of nervous of them hitting December is that they're just trying to hit that quarter, that fiscal end of quarter. Because otherwise it would have to be delayed all the way until like February or March, not even in January. I feel like I'm hoping that there's no, ominous little double meaning behind it getting this release date, because I was full on expecting it to get pushed into 2023. So to see it getting an earlier release, so I'm like, all right, as long as it's functioning on day one, I feel like I'm a little nervous about that. But with all that said and done, I'll probably put it back on the list, all things considered. Moving on, Tron is getting a brand new game in the form of a visual novel adventure called Tron Identity, which is pretty much like a detective story. I feel like that can actually work. Now, it's not coming until 2023 to PC and consoles, but I feel like there's definitely some material here that sounds interesting. This is taken from the IGN article. It says, developer Bithell Games has revealed Tron Identity, a new visual novel adventure that follows Query. Get it? Because Qwerty, the keys on they just took the T out. A detective program tasked with solving the mystery of an unprecedented crime. While not much more revealed, we know it will be released on PC and consoles in 2023. So there you have that. New co-op game, Mickey Mouse and Friends game, Illusion Island, announced exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. So there's a little fun 2D platformer there with Mickey, Donald, Goofy, Minnie, and the rest of the gang coming to Switch. A fun little adventure there. Marvel World of Heroes, an AR game, kind of like Pokemon Go, except Marvel on your phone. And if you want to twist that knife even further, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, another mobile game that's going to be like an MMO on your phone. Marvel Snap, the upcoming free-to-play collectible card game on your phone. God damn it. And Return to Monkey Island gets a new trailer ahead of its Talk Like a Pirate Day launch date. So if you guys are fans of the Monkey Island series, you got a first look at that. Gameplay trailer for Aliens Dark Descent, because 20th Century Fox is technically now part of Disney. So there is that. By the way, the Avatar thing that I mentioned before, I stand corrected. Frontiers, that's the console game, but that was shown at the D23 Expo. The mobile MMORPG shooter, Avatar Reckoning, that's the mobile phone game. So my corrections on that, my apologies. We did get news or whiffs that apparently an old Genesis game for Gargoyles is getting remastered, so I think that's actually pretty cool and interesting, but they simply just announced it. They didn't showcase any kind of gameplay or any official release date or any other further details. Gargoyles was first released and was one of the earlier projects of composer Michael Giacchino, so I know who to hire to compose the score for a live-action Gargoyles game in the event that I ever do one. More information on Dreamlight Valley, that game that I mentioned before, saying that there's going to be a new Toy Story realm later this year with some really weird-looking models for Buzz and Woody, if I do say so myself. Lego Star Wars Saga gets a new Galactic Edition. I feel like the game just came out and they're already making, I mean, it's one thing to announce DLC, it's another to just make a new edition, because that makes me worried that they're going to start discontinuing the original and just charge more. You get what I'm saying? So that's a little scary, in my opinion, from a business standpoint. That Speedstorm game introduces new racers from Monsters Inc., so the Disney Mario Kart style of game is getting new characters. Marvel Strike Force gets Red Hulk, again, a mobile game. And that's it. That's it for the list. Guys, how many times did I say mobile in that last half? Outside of the Captain America Black Panther game, outside of, God, what else? Midnight Suns getting a release date, and then maybe some details on the Avatar game or Monkey Island, and the intrigue behind the Tron detective story. Like, everything else was just mobile or just stuff that was talked about but not actually shown. And I understand if something's not ready, then it's not ready. But likewise, don't announce it. Just keep working on it. You know what I'm saying? So, all in all, this was just a thing that, thank God it was 23 minutes, because if they had bloated it up to an hour, oh, this would have been a full-fledged rant, I can tell you that. Now let's talk about some of the bigger showcases of video games that we've happened in the past week. I know that that's probably one of the biggest things that, and most exciting things that everyone's wanting to talk about here. And yes, we got to start off with another anticipated one, Ubisoft. Just to see what kind of shit they're going to shovel here now, Assassin's Creed-wise. Yeah, guys, I got to get this out of the way. I'm sorry. It's like, we can't jump into the goodness of the state of play and the Nintendo Direct without at least getting, scraping a little bit of this off, this little bit of a dribble off in the form of Assassin's Creed. I'm sorry, or Ubisoft Forward, if you will. So, once again, got the article here from IGN. That's pretty much everything announced in a streamlined article listing type beat here. All starting off with the long-rumored and long-talked about Assassin's Creed Infinity, which is meant to be like a hub or a platform or just this thing. It's not even a game per se. It's meant to be like this service. It's basically Ubisoft dipping their toes into the live service game, like they haven't already been doing that with the way that they've got their deluxe editions and gold editions with their DLC and their packs and all their stuff. This is now them doing it a little bit more by the book, if you will, or more traditional, so to speak, with Assassin's Creed Infinity. And it's pretty much going to be encompassing 2 new games. One of them is going to be set in feudal Japan. So coming off the article here, Ubisoft has officially revealed Assassin's Creed Infinity, a new platform and hub that will serve as the future of the Assassin's Creed franchise. Furthermore, Ubisoft shared that the first 2 games for the platform, one that will follow the life of a shinobi in feudal Japan, and another helmed by Watch Dogs Legion director Clint Hawking. Kind of going forward here, Infinity is not a game itself, but a place where players will explore and jump into future entries. Beginning with the feudal Japan game Assassin's Creed Codename Red, while not much was revealed about the second game, Assassin's Creed Codename Hex, it was revealed that it will be a very different type of Assassin's Creed game and may feature witchcraft. In addition to the single-player games, Ubisoft also shared that the Assassin's Creed multiplayer will return in some form, although it said details will come at a later date. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is like their way of trying to compete with Game Pass. Like it's going to be like a Game Pass version of Assassin's Creed games only. And they're going to be shorter and more just, focused. I don't know. Can I just buy the games if I want to? But that's just it. I think that's what they're trying to combat here, is to try to buy games individually. It's like, no, you want to play this particular Assassin's Creed game? You got to get the service. You got to get Infinity. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, this game that you're talking about that takes place in feudal Japan, I already played that game. It's called Ghost of Tsushima. Okay, so y'all can keep that. Now, if we are to talk about individual Assassin's Creed games, they did shed a little bit more on the aforementioned Assassin's Creed Mirage. So during this Ubisoft Forward, they did officially reveal Assassin's Creed Mirage through another CG trailer, only for them to have the audacity to tell us to pre-order right after this CG trailer. We didn't get a gameplay. We got some details that it takes place in Baghdad 20 years before the events of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So it takes place in what, like 9, 8, I can't remember what it was. It was like a single-digit year. But anyways, takes place in that time frame. It will star Basim Ishak, I'm hoping I'm not mispronouncing that, and is designed to be a modern take on the original gameplay template for the earlier Assassin's Creed game. During development, the team at Ubisoft Bordeaux focused on the same three design pillars as the original Assassin's Creed game: stealth, parkour, and assassinations. Assassin's Creed Mirage will be released in 2023. That's really about the gist of it. And personally, it didn't really... I mean, the setting looks kind of interesting, and I think our main character here, what was his name again? Basim, could look interesting, but we've said this before about prior Assassin's Creed characters, but the game itself didn't really do much. Yeah, they're trying to dial it back. Right now, if you were to pre-order Assassin's Creed Mirage, I think the base version actually goes for $50. And it's funny because they're like, oh, it's going to be a bit on the shorter side. It's going to take anywhere between 10 to 15 hours to complete, so it's shorter. And I'm like, how's it? It's weird that they're calling it shorter, considering that that's how long Assassin's Creed games used to be back in the day with the original, like, first and second one. It would only take about 10 or 15 hours. It wasn't until, what was it? Not Odyssey, Origins. It was with Origins, the Egyptian one, where they started to go a little bit more open world, and they started to make these big, gargantuan 40, 50-hour playthroughs or campaigns that became the norm. So for them to say, oh, it's much shorter, I'm like, no, this used to be the norm. You guys just kind of walked away from it. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just, Assassin's Creed is just so, I'm legitimately starting to feel the fatigue that I'd rather just wait for the reviews on this one. Moving on, though, the Assassin's Creed fatigue continues with mobile gaming. Yay! Assassin's Creed codenamed Jade is an open-world Assassin's Creed game for mobile devices. It's getting a new mobile entry set in ancient China called Assassin's Creed Jade. According to Ubisoft, it will feature classic Assassin's Creed gameplay and will take place in an open world that was built to work well with touch controls. I don't give a shit. I really don't. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the last chapter till tie up the chapter till, I don't know if this is a typo. It is a typo. Will tie up the loose ends of Aviar's story, so we're getting a new free update for Valhalla that will tie up Aviar's story. That was pretty much all they talked about. They announced that Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope will get post-launch content with Rayman, and that Rayman's going to be finally included since the Rabbids are in there. Rayman's going to be making an appearance. Game's not even out, though, and they're already talking about DLC, so that causes just a little bit of concern for me. Skull and Bones trailer showed off more ship customization and trading networks called The Helm. More talk about that currency, though. Gotta be honest, again, that concerns me. But the game is set to come out November 8th, and a new trailer focused on ship customization, the in-game trading network known as The Helm, and much more. Will feature cross-platform play at launch. And a new Just Dance called for 2023 was announced for holiday release. In other news, water is wet. Yeah. Outside of that, though, we got live service games, mobile. I got to be honest, just a bunch of stuff that I don't care about. Like Division, there's going to be a mobile Division or a free-to-play Division version. Stuff for more content for Brawlhalla. What else? Rainbow Six is getting a mobile version, and they showed some gameplay of that. A game called Trackmania is headed to consoles. It's like a racing game. All in all, just a bunch of other stuff that I didn't care for, and that's the side stuff. And there's going to be a Assassin's Creed live-action show coming to Netflix, because everything Netflix touches turns to gold, right? Yeah. This goes hand in hand with that Marvel and Games showcase where I'm like, if you ain't Xbox, Sony, or Nintendo, you better come to play. And once again this week, Nintendo and Sony demonstrated that. Let's get into it. And now, time for the main event, ladies and gentlemen. Blue versus Red, Nintendo Direct versus the PlayStation State of Play. Who would have fucking thought? Well, nobody prior to this week. In fact, so much so that I was going to take what was been kind of brewing between Jim Bryan and Phil Spencer, and the debacle between Call of Duty being exclusive and all that stuff. A lot of those stories were going to be punted over to this week's episode, but at the quite literally at the very last second, both Nick, oh my God, it's nuts. I really do wonder what the meetings were. I would love to be a fly on the wall to see how these meetings went down, both over in Nintendo Japan and then PlayStation, or both. I don't know if they came from the Japanese side or the America side, but someone over there, they must have been talking to each other. They really do. I have a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory here that somebody was doing this on purpose to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were just kind of plotting and scheming in a very Game of Thrones Littlefinger sort of way, where somebody was ear whispering into one of the heads over at PlayStation, like, hey, you should do a state of play tomorrow. And then someone over at Nintendo said, hey, you should do a direct tomorrow. And then they just happen to coincide. It's like when you set people up. It's like in the Parent Trap, where they set up the exes to try to get with each other, but the exes are like, what? This is not what you know what I'm saying? Like one of those meet cutes. It kind of felt like that a little bit here, because just literally at the last second on Monday the 12th, that rumored Nintendo Direct finally was announced by Nintendo, and then literally just a few hours later, a state of play gets announced for a few hours later, but the same day. So the Nintendo Direct was announced for 7 a.m. Pacific time, so my time, West Coast, Best Coast, on September 13th, which made sure that I was not going to watch it live. 7 a.m., yeah, I'm good. All right, I'll watch it over breakfast the following morning, and it's Nintendo. I don't imagine that there's anything that I need to react to like immediately. Nintendo creators, Nintendo stands, ambassadors, if you will, if you want to call them that more plainly, they're the ones that for sure need to cover this stuff ASAP. They need to wake up if they're in the West Coast, or if they're in the East Coast, 10 o'clock, not terribly bad, but still, I heard some people were falling asleep. So that was announced for 7 a.m. The state of play was at 3 p.m. That one for sure I did watch live. I didn't stream it, obviously, but I was recording in the event that something that is content worthy, that was going to be going up on the niche channel, wink wink nudge nudge, was going to happen. Spoilers, it didn't. And that will kind of factor in a little bit into my overall impressions of the state of play. But before we get into that, let's just run it through. Of course, I'm not going to cover each and every single thing. I just kind of extrapolated all of the main points that really stuck with me, respectively, for both the Nintendo Direct and the PlayStation State of Play. So I'm not going to go over every single title that was announced, every single title that was covered, especially in some of those montages. Because literally both State of Play and the Nintendo Direct, they did that thing where they montage games to be announced. Some of them are ports, some of them are games that were already announced before, and they were just kind of like reiterating that, hey, this stuff is still coming out. And then ever so often, they'll announce something just kind of very, almost kind of blasé. In fact, there was one inside of the Direct that did feel like they were just kind of breezing over, and I feel like, the community that this title belongs to are probably losing their shit right now, and the Direct is kind of treating it a little nonchalantly. So let's get into that. Let's get into the Nintendo Direct first, because that one did come up first. And I wrote down, like I said, all of the basic bullet points here. So to kind of open the show, Nintendo announced a brand new Fire Emblem. Jesus Christ, I can't even remember the subtitle. My apologies. Let me go ahead and bring up the subtitle here. But a new Fire Emblem title was announced. This is a very straightforward Fire Emblem in the sense that it is Engage. Fire Emblem Engage. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the subtitle. I did write down a little piece of impression, a piece of thought here, or an analogy, if you will, that could potentially land me in hot water for Fire Emblem fans and Nintendo fans. But Fire Emblem Engage was announced. It's basically a brand new mainline game. It has the mainline style of gameplay, so it's not going to be like a Fire Emblem Warrior style game where it's hack and slash. It's an actual tactics game like Fire Emblem has always been. It's funny because some people have made the comparison that it looks like a mobile game, but at the same time, I'm like, Fire Emblem games have always had the turn-based tactical strategy onboard kind of look to it. It's just that this time I think it's 3D realized, while others did make a solid argument that Three Houses looked a little bit better. I will admit there are some instances here and there where I do remember Three Houses looking a little bit better, a little bit more polished as far as presentation. Engage looks a little bit more stylized, but maybe not in the best reasons. I mean, you got some really fantastical stuff that has to do with like dragons and all this stuff. And then you have a main character who, the design team couldn't decide if they should be redheaded or blue haired. So they're like, well, why not both? And it looks fucking ridiculous. And then over on the questionable side, Marth returns, except I haven't played every single Fire Emblem game, so I don't know what the mainline story is. But I'm led to believe that Marth is possibly dead, because he's always got like this ghosty kind of aura to him in the trailer. So I'm assuming that he's dead and he's being talked to beyond the dimensions, if you will, or something's going on. Something crazy is going on. But a new Fire Emblem game is coming. And this led me to an analogy that, like I said, could potentially piss some people off. But I'm going to say it. Hot take. Fire Emblem is to Nintendo like Assassin's Creed is to Ubisoft. Fire Emblem is Nintendo's Assassin's Creed that I feel like there's one either every year or every other year. It may be, it may receive well as far as critics, as far as commercial reception, but it just feels like if there's no new IP, if there's nothing to really, if there's no other wells to really, go back to for Nintendo, you can always rely on them to do a Fire Emblem game the way that Ubisoft is always going to fall back on Assassin's Creed. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that they're one-to-one the same style of games. Obviously, they're not. But I'm just mean in terms of how these companies treat the games or treat the franchise. It's like, yeah, there's always going to be there's a new full 40-minute direct. There's probably going to be a Fire Emblem trailer for a Nintendo Direct. Just like if there's a new PlayStation State of Play or a Ubisoft Forward, they're going to talk about an Assassin's Creed game or an Assassin's Creed sort of platform, just like we talked about with the Ubisoft Forward. It's a guarantee. You know what I'm saying? To the point where I'm starting to, I know some people have already been feeling it for some time. I am now feeling that, regardless of how great the titles may turn out to be, starting to feel that Fire Emblem kind of fatigue where I'm like, all right, it's time to rest these characters for like a good while and just focus on something new. Or maybe revisit what was going to be a franchise, except it's been rather dormant for a while now. Astral Chain, a couple of other, things that are on the Switch. I don't know. Just saying, Nintendo, give it a rest. After that, I feel like an awful lot of the cartilage holding the Nintendo Direct together was the usual stuff that you would have come to expect, like the ports, games from prior platforms, even some as old as NES, SNES, and other stuff, and even N64 through the Nintendo of America expansions, Nintendo Online expansions, where they're adding new games like Mario Party, Pokemon Stadium 2. But that led us to a beefy one, GoldenEye, and everyone's like losing their shit. Meanwhile, I'm like, well, it's coming to Game Pass, so still no incentive to want to get Nintendo Online. It's coming to Game Pass, so it's going to be pretty cool. But we're going to have to wait and figure. I don't know what it is, but I just have this weird, strange gut feeling that everyone was going, oh my God, GoldenEye. And I'm like, why do I feel like there's going to be a catch? Like either there's not going to be the split screen that we all fondly remember from N64, or there's not going to be online, or it's going to be one or the other, or both, or there's just something that, I don't know why, but there's just something that just makes my spider senses tingle. And also it could be my bias that, unlike a good chunk of the community out there, I just didn't gravitate towards. I'm in the minority that just did not gravitate towards GoldenEye that way. I really didn't. Like, I did enjoy my time playing the game whenever we were doing multiplayers at my cousin's house or on my friend's house on N64, but I don't remember it as fondly as others do, where they lose their shit whenever they talk about GoldenEye or whenever they talk about, like, big N64 titles from their childhood. To me, it's more so Ocarina of Time, Star Fox 64, F-Zero X for that matter. I mean, bring back a new F-Zero for the Switch. But here we go. Spoilers, another Direct with no mention of F-Zero whatsoever. So, of course, we've come to expect that at this point. Outside of that, though, we got more DLC expansions and cloud versions. You got DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which just came out, just talking about this mechanical character. I don't know why they were so emphatic on the character being mechanical. And then Resident Evil is going to get just a bunch of cloud versions of the titles, because Lord knows that the Steam Deck is going to do a much better job of running that thing natively than the goddamn Switch. Switch Pro, we've been saying this for a while now. It's time. It's really, really time. We're about to literally go into our 60th year of the Switch, and there's some titles that still look like they're chugging on the Switch, and Nintendo's just like, yeah, but we're selling, so why bother? Tunic, anyone? Actually, speaking of ports, one of the things that was shown off here in the direct was Tunic, and that's why I bring it up. Is because I saw the trailer and I'm like, okay, oh neat. Tunic, game I played on Game Pass sometime a while, is coming to the Switch. And as the trailer went on, I'm like, is it my stream? Is it my video? Why is it lagging? Later on, I was watching Bob Wolf's podcast stream where they talked about Tunic, and they did say that no, that was the game. It was chugging on that stream, on the frame rate. Nobody could explain what was going on, but it was actually having frame rate dips. Unless it was the stream for everybody. Apparently, Tunic was not running well on the Switch, and it's like, oh God, why can't it? It's an top-down isometric Zelda-like game, but it's with a very simple art style. Why is it having problems? Who knows? Which is why I'm very, somewhat bewildered that a very anticipated title like Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII is coming to the Switch. I had no idea this thing was coming to the Switch. I knew it was coming to PS5, and I think also PS4 and Xbox, and PC. I think it's PC, but Switch? And let alone the Switch version here through the Direct confirms a December 13th release date. On the one hand, I'm kind of shocked that it's coming out so quickly. And then on the other hand, at the same time, it's also kind of a remaster. It's not necessarily a brand new game. But it's doing that weird thing where they're calling it a remaster, but it's doing just a little extra than just a remaster. It's not a full-blown remake either. It's somewhere in that sandwiched spot. I'm trying to think of a good example of another game that did that, where they called it a remaster, but they did do. There are some other Final Fantasy games where they did the same thing, where they took some models in game and cleaned them up that in a much higher state than simply just remastering it, or just giving it an HD coat of paint. No, they actually cleaned some stuff up, and you can tell if you were to see side by side comparisons from the PSP version to this new version that's coming out. And I'm down for it. Being that it's a remaster of an older game, I don't know if I'm going to pick it up day one, but I know it's something that I'm definitely going to want to pick up and play before part 2 of the remake comes out, because I feel like it's going to be able to fully contextualize some stuff that's going down in the story. Plus, I wouldn't be surprised if they did incorporate some brand new stuff that will then cater to the direction that the remake project is going into. So that'll be pretty exciting. It's just more shocking that this was coming out of the Direct, and this was the title that felt like they were just kind of breezing over. Meanwhile, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that a good chunk of the community right now is losing their shit, and you're just kind of treating it like, Crisis Core coming on the Switch, and here's the date. Anyways, Octopath Traveler 2, dun, 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 dun. It's like, okay, all right, well, moving on. Square Enix, Octopath Traveler 2 was not expecting a sequel in that franchise, but at the same time, it's technically not a direct sequel because you're going to have new characters, new storylines, and a new environment, but with the same kind of aesthetic, the beautiful art style. Still haven't played the original. Still haven't played Octopath Traveler. I did play Triangle Strategy, which is kind of like a sister to this franchise, so it's not Triangle Strategy is not directly connected to Octopath, but it's from the same developers, from the same, obviously, in-house studio with Square Enix. And borrowing a similar sort of style is just a different kind of direction or POV as far as battles are concerned and whatnot. But, I did enjoy Triangle Strategy quite an awful lot, and I'm looking forward to finally going through at least a playthrough of Octopath Traveler, because I do own it. I just, for some strange reason, still haven't started up. I think it's because of the length of the game that kind of scares me. And plus, we're already halfway through September at this point, and still got Elden Ring to play. I know that's going to take up an awful lot of my time. God of War, more on that a little bit later, but God of War coming out later. Plague Tale Requiem comes out next month. Handful of other stuff that's kind of being shifted around. Gotham Knights, I know it's going to be making for some content on the niche channel, and I know that's for sure probably going to have to be played. So, we'll see. I know eventually there's going to be a time where playing more on the handheld is going to be something desired out of me as a gamer, because of how much potential traveling I might be doing, or navigating, etc. So I know that right now I should take advantage of just playing the console stuff versus the Switch and portable stuff. So, anyways. However, that was not the sequel that everybody was talking to. Their final one more thing, and to be honest, my final little bullet point, like I said, I'm probably skipping over some stuff that some of you guys listening are probably thinking of right now, but it just didn't, call on to me enough to write down here my bullet points. But my final bullet point, as far as what was shown at the direct, was of course their final trailer, which was a full-blown kind of gameplay and also kind of story trailer on Breath of the Wild 2, which is now officially titled Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yes, I read the jokes that people were saying, oh, that's why they didn't show the stream in the UK channel, because it's called Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, I will admit that's actually pretty damn clever. But we got our new trailer, our new title. It showed a little bit more details and hints as to what's going down as far as gameplay is concerned, as far as Link being a bit more vertical in how he travels, using some stasis powers where he can kind of like zip up via like this little rock thing, glide on this little machine bird that he's riding in the sky, climbing, an awful lot of verticality that the developers did mention before they were going to try to incorporate more into the world of Hyrule in this new sequel. So that's fine and dandy, but once again, that's actually only about a third of the trailer if you really think about it. The first 2/3 are just cave paintings and cave carvings that I saw a joke on Twitter that said, Zelda fans deciphering these hieroglyphics for the next 8 months or something like that, which is literally just 40 seconds of a minute and a half trailer. It's like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to look into it all that much. I just deciphered that there were some elf ears in there, and I'm like, well, that's got to be Zelda. And to me, the most surprising thing was a release date, May 12th, 2023. And I remember Bob Wolf on the podcast saying the same thing that I was kind of thinking of, was that this is kind of soon-ish for a Zelda game. If you really, really think about it, like it's 8 months away. Wait, is it 8 months? 5 other? Yeah, about 8-ish months. But two things: one, for a Zelda title to get a name and then actually be like, well, see you in just about 2/3 of a year. It's like that's actually coming up fairly close compared to prior titles, even in some of the mainline consoles like GameCube games and the Wii and the Wii U, etc. And then, of course, the Switch with Breath of the Wild. And plus, it's been delayed a couple of times, so to see it get a title and concrete date, not even a release window, a concrete date, I'm like, that's interesting. And the second thing that arguably could be relative, but at the same time, I feel like some people will hear me out when I say this. Once you are over the 30-year mark, 8 months is nothing. Okay? You're going to busy yourself up with other games, life, work. May 12th will be here before you know it. Now, one other interesting little detail that I did read on Twitter the following day that I found kind of poignant was that apparently May 12th also happens to be the birthday of a huge Nintendo fan, but unfortunately no longer with us, Etika. And I'm wondering if that was done on purpose or if it just happened to be a happy accident that Nintendo fell on. Don't know if we're ever going to get any kind of confirmation on that, but I do find that, like I said, rather poignant and interesting. Now, that pretty much wraps my key takeaways from the Direct. And overall, I felt like I was, for the most part, quite satisfied until I realized that the Direct ended. We even got a reveal for Pikmin 4. I almost kind of forgot about that, but at the same time, I've never really been into Pikmin. I never played them, but I never really had that much interest in them, if you catch what I'm saying. But to me, the bigger drawbacks, disappointments was that despite the rumors, and even though we did get a touch of Zelda-related news, no form of either confirmation or hints at either Wind Waker ports or Twilight Princess ports on the Switch. So, none of that to be had here. Okay, missed opportunity by Nintendo. Likewise, no Metroid Prime news. Now, frankly, I was not expecting anything on Metroid Prime 4 because that game's being restarted from the ground up, from scratch with a new studio. So it's probably not gonna be until next year that we finally hear about Metroid Prime 4. And it's probably not even gonna come out until like 2024. With that said, I feel like the iron is starting to get quite hot enough to strike to release a Metroid Prime trilogy collection of Prime 1, 2, and 3 on the Switch. Ample enough time to start selling that thing, get people to play so that when 4 comes out and you start talking about 4 news, you're going to have even more people hyped, more people in the know of this franchise. Why not? And still, we got none of that. So, yeah, those are like my wild bingo card kind of fill-ins that I'm starting to feel are not going to happen, but they're going to stay on the card for the time being. But that pretty much wraps up what my impressions were on the Nintendo Direct, and overall I found it to be quite solid. So, how did Sony fare off a few hours later? Now, this one I did watch live as it kind of unfolded. It was also made out to be a little bit on the shorter side of things, only about 20 minutes. So I thought to myself, okay, how much can they really jam pack into 20 minutes? And will my boy, not boy, but my boy, Spidey, or my boys, I should say, Peter and Miles, show up to then show us a little bit more of what is supposed to be coming out next year, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. There were recent rumblings. I don't know if any of you guys were able to pick up on this on the social medias, but apparently there were some Insomniac employees starting to hype shit up because they were saying that there was apparently a gameplay slice that they were showing to investors, and investors walked away ultra happy that it was just blowing them away. It's a lot of chatter, a lot of things, and considering that there were rumors going around there was going to be a state of play soon announced, and then finally it was. It's like, and then we also had the Disney Marvel Games showcase last week that was then covered on this episode. It's like, okay, maybe the state of play will be it. We didn't get anything out of the Disney Marvel showcase, and granted, it's Disney. This one is dedicated PlayStation, and Marvel Spider-Man is the franchise that's exclusive on that platform. There's gotta be something here, right? Well, at first, I thought that maybe we were going to be in for a certified banger as the show opened with an official reveal of Tekken 8. So this time, no screen of Kazuya just looking at the screen saying, get ready. No, it was a full-blown in-game, according to Hamada, I think Harada is his last name, the director, he says that this is actually in-game assets being used for the cutscene. So it wasn't a pre-rendered cutscene, it was actually in-game assets. But it showed pretty much Kazuya and what was the other character's name? I legit cannot remember the other character's name. But basically the two of them from Tekken 7 going at it. And when I saw that other character, that's where I realized I think it's 8 because, I don't know if this is considered a spoiler, but that other character that's not Kazuya, he only showed up in like 6 or 7. I know that because I played the story for 7 and I had like this little recap thing, and it showed that he wasn't there at the beginning. So this could not be a remake of 1. And sure enough, it's confirmed to be Tekken 8 at the end of the trailer. And what seemed like gameplay, because the camera kind of goes over to the side and makes it look like it's going to be gameplay, but it also kind of reminded me, what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the Mortal Kombat 10 reveal trailer from a few years back where it did the same thing where the camera went off to the side and it showed Scorpion and Sub-Zero fighting and it kind of looked like gameplay, but at the same time there was no HUD and it kept punching in and the camera kept doing like these flashy things that made me go, it looks like they're trying to emulate gameplay, but it's still being messed around with that I'm having trouble believing that it actually is. So I don't know. Excited for Tekken fans. I'm not a huge Tekken guy. Like I said, I played through the story of 7 and tried other different modes. I could not click with the style of combat. I'm more of a Street Fighter kind of guy, but who knows? Maybe I'll still dive back in, and knowing that we're getting both Street Fighter and Tekken 8 likely in 2023, even though we don't have a confirmed date for Tekken 8, it's a fighting game. How can it take that much longer to develop? You know what I'm saying? And plus, it's been a while since 7 came out, even. So we're probably going to be seeing it next year, both of these titles next year, and it's going to be a good. It looks like it's shaping up to be a good year for fighting game fans, for the fighting game community, and for Maximilian, dude. Then we got some VR chatter. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, gets a new gameplay trailer. A game called Demio got announced for PlayStation VR 2, which is like a card-based game. I would even argue that looked more like AR rather than VR, because even though it's a VR setting, you're putting stuff on the table, so it's like, well, I mean, you could just use the cameras on the outside of the VR 2 to then use your room as a way to put things down. So, I mean, that's what I think they could have used instead of just a pre-rendered environment. That's why I'm like, yeah, that almost feels more like AR than it does VR. But either way, I'm probably not going to play it. A new trailer for Hogwarts Legacy that shows off a PlayStation exclusive quest, which looked intriguing, especially, and also kind of creepy with like the mannequins moving on their own. But at the same time, whenever there's always like these console exclusive quests, I always get worried that they're making it seem bigger than it actually is. And then when you finally play it, it's only going to be like a 10, 15-minute exclusive quest. And at that point, it's like, well, get the game on whatever platform you so choose. Because honestly, you're not really going to be faced with much of an issue here. Moving on, we then get, before I get into an interesting portion of the state of play here, let's just cover some other stuff that I looked at and said, well, that looked kind of whatevers. There was more talk about PlayStation Star's loyalty program, so the stuff that's going to be rolling out this month. For PlayStation owners, I can sign up for this thing so they can earn points by achieving trophies and playing games, and that could be redeemed for digital goods, maybe even some discounts on the PlayStation Store. Sounds intriguing, but I still feel like they could have gone into some further detail and answered some other questions. They just kind of touched upon it here on the State of Play, and with only 20 minutes, I didn't imagine that they were going to get into it too much, so that's why I was like, well, that's eventually probably going to be a blog post. Who knows? Probably by the time this podcast goes up, there might be a blog post that kind of elaborates a little bit more on that, at least more than what the first one did. Then we get a game called Sin Duality. It's a new game from Bandai Namco. This is the article over from IGN because I legit could not remember anything about it up until this point. Sin Duality has been announced from Bandai Namco, a third-person shooter featuring mechs and an art style akin to Nier Automata. In fact, I even thought it was a Nier-related game when it started to show off via the trailer, albeit a little bit more colorful. A trailer showed off the game in action alongside a 2023 release window. It's funny because I'm glad that I brought this up, because following thereafter, there was then another trailer for Project Eve. It was that game where it showed the girl with like the green outfit, but it was very action heavy and it looked legitimately interesting. But not only did we get a new trailer, but also a new gameplay trailer, but also a new title. It has been renamed as Stellar Blade, and it's coming next year. Project Eve, the extremely shiny-looking action game shown off last year from Korean studio ShiftUp, has reemerged as Stellar Blade. The trailer showed off a mix of gameplay and cinematics, giving players a look at the game's futuristic setting and story. It showed off these other characters too, like this guy wearing this gas mask and stuff that's going on, these like cybernetics. Again, looks interesting, action-heavy, but I'm going to need a little bit more context. I just know that for a little while there, they were showing off some games that are just, I hate to use this term because I know that some people could call it a little derogatory, but I have no other way to really, look at these games. They're very weebish games. I'm not even going to say Japanese. In fact, I'm about to get into some super Japanese games right here that look arguably better and more enticing than these games, because these games look a little weebish. They have the girls, they have all of them having that same kind of dialogue where it's in Japanese, but they go, like they're doing that very like cringy kind of cutesy way of talking. I don't know what it is, but it just bugs me. All right, I'm not in that demographic. I know some people are. I'm not, and they got the most perfect, beautiful faces, but they're doing the most badass stuff, because it just felt like they just feel like games made by people that want to see a certain something on the screen. You know what I'm saying? But that's as far as I'll go in describing some of these games. Anyways, before we do, however, get into those other Japanese games that did look legitimately cool, but also more up my alley, There's this game called Pacific Drive, the first title from Ironwood Studios that was shown off a little bit. That looked intriguing. Looks like it's post-apocalyptic with some alien stuff. Ironwood Studios' first game is officially called Pacific Drive and will put players behind the wheel as they drive around what appears to be a post-apocalyptic version of the Pacific Northwest. Not much more other details. It just showed kind of like this ominous tone to it, but it looked interesting. And it was just a reveal trailer, so it's probably going to be a while off before we know more about the game. Then we get, like I said, those two very samurai-heavy looking games, but nevertheless still rather interesting. So we have Rise of the Ronin from Neo developer Team Ninja. Over at IGN, they say Neo developer Team Ninja has announced an open-world samurai game called Rise of the Ronin, a PlayStation 5 console exclusive with a 2024 release window. A trailer showed off the gorgeous world set during the modernization period of Japan. Modernized enough that somewhere in there they're like, well, these things work. Let's start using guns. Samurai is using guns, but it's not like over the top. It looks kind of grounded. It looks kind of authentic and dope and badass. And sure, some people could still bring up the argument that we're getting a little bit of open world fatigue, especially with companies like Ubisoft. But with Team Ninja at the helm, especially after the Neo games, I'd say that they could do something really cool here. Now, if you're looking for something a bit more over the top and possibly even kind of loony, Yakuza's Ishin spin-off game getting a Western release in the form of I guess I could say a remake. Ishin, Like a Dragon Ishin, which is a Yakuza spin-off game, is getting released for the first time outside of Japan. The game is coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 in February of 2023, which, again, technically next year, but also not far away. That's only about, 5 months? 4 if you don't want to really count September already, because like I said, we're already halfway through that. So this looks interesting, but as soon as I saw some of the character models, I'm like, is this Yakuza related? And eventually we saw some crazy combat, some really ridiculous stuff. Like there's that shot of him like, subduing a guy but stuffing berries into his face. I'm like, yeah, this got to be Yakuza related. It may not be directly connected to those stories, but something is going on here with that, and it ended up being funny enough. They're also using guns despite being samurai in this game as well. It's just, like I said, a completely different beast as far as tone and atmosphere than that Rise of the Ronin game, but to each their own. So you got something to pick here between 2023 and 2024, and frankly, that about does it for the state of play, except for their one more thing. Spoilers, no, it was not Spider-Man. So the stuff that I was recording, that I was reacting to, pretty much still on my hard drive. Haven't edited it yet because there's nothing for the niche channel. There's nothing for any other channels. I'd rather put my energy and my efforts into either saying what I'm saying right now into podcast form or just moving on to the next video. Nevertheless, though, they still capped it all off with an impressive look at God of War Ragnarok, but not before unveiling a brand new limited edition DualSense. It's basically a blue and white DualSense. It has a very clean look to it, clean color scheme. It looks nice. It's got the little big wolf and little wolf there in the middle on the touchpad. Probably won't get it though, to be honest. I don't know. That's nothing about it gravitates towards me unless you know what it looks like? It looks like the kind of controller that looks clean and cool enough that either if I have legit money to burn, then maybe if I see it in store, like if I literally walk into the store and there it is, then maybe I'll pick it up. But am I going to like pre-order it ahead of time when pre-orders go live? Nah. Or even if I see it in store, but if money is tight because I just don't have it to spend, considering I already have spare controllers for the PS5, nah. No, I'm cool. So that's the only circumstance. If it's in store and I have the money to spend where I'm like, yeah, I got a bonus this week or something like that, sure, let's do it. Otherwise, nah, I'm good. I am more attracted to this final trailer. Well, I don't think it's the final trailer, but another new trailer for God of War that was pretty much the style of trailer that I was hoping for Spider-Man to get, which is a combination of cutscenes, story beats, character development, awesome moments like Atreus splitting the fucking sky like he did with the arrow, but then arguably more important, gameplay. badass gameplay, Kratos going to town on some more mythological characters, some cool set pieces, environments that look insane, and then all capped off with a brief tease, very tiny tease, of what is the inevitable Kratos versus Thor fight. Oh man, that part at the end, it all looked great. Now, there is a caveat. It's a sad caveat, but at the same time, it's one that I think a lot of us were already gestating in our brains for quite a while, especially with the way that developers have been, over at Santa Monica Studio have been talking about how this is the last game. They're not going to make a trilogy. This is actually the last game to cap off the Norse mythology angle of the God of War universe, or whatever you want to call it. Some people were bringing up the theory that maybe for sure this time, because it looked that way in God of War 3, only for the end credit scene to say, nope, not done yet. But now I think for sure we might be bidding farewell to Kratos. And it's something that people were theorizing for quite a while, but this new trailer was really hammering hammering that point just a little harder, especially with Kratos' epic delivery of the line, "Death can have me when it's earned me." It's a badass line, but I read into the subtext going, I think they're hinting at something. And plus, is it just me, or throughout the trailer, Christopher Judge as Kratos is sounding a little haggard? Not bad. I mean intentionally haggard. Like intentionally, like something's going on with Kratos. Like I suspect something's going on with Kratos. Now, as long I know some people are already kind of piecing this together and having these thoughts and concerns and worries. As long as they don't pull a Last of Us Part 2, I'm sorry, someone's got to say it. As long as they don't pull a Last of Us Part 2, kill him off early. But instead, if they're going to kill him off, honestly, I have no problem with them killing off Kratos. I really don't. Just give it a meaningful death. Give that line a meaningful purpose. Death can have me when it's earned me. Earn it. Everybody agreed that Joel, in Last of Us Part 2, he could have got, they wouldn't have had a problem going out. It was the way he went out that people were pissed off at. Not that he went out, period. He could have gone out, like, in a very meaningful way in the second or third act of that game, but instead it just felt cheap. It felt just for shock factor. As long as they don't do it for shock factor, and like I said, like in that line, it says it's earned, then that's okay. And then future games could be all about Atreus or another character or whatever. I'm down for that. I'm legitimately down for that. Interested that the trailer did not show too much of Freya, but at the same time, I feel like we do have more pressing matters like Thor and everything else that's going down here in Norse mythology. Although it did look like he was carrying her in a sequence where it showed them like running through like some woods or something. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff that happened in that trailer that's honestly very difficult to kind of just break down in podcast form. I'll just say, if you haven't watched it already and you have played the 2018 God of War, because if you haven't, I will admit there are going to be some spoilery bits from not only this trailer, but some other trailers that have been released up until this point for Ragnarok. But so far, this new story trailer is legit. It was a legit capper to, once again, another solid state of play. Granted, I'm ultimately bitter because of the lack of Spider-Man 2, but that just factors into my biases. Like I mentioned on my Twitter and on my community post on YouTube, taking those biases aside, remaining objective, it was a pretty solid state of play. Was it enough to topple Nintendo, in my opinion? As far as the frequency and the substance that they provided? If I had to pick one, which is at the end of the day really stupid to just do, but if I had to pick one, ladies and gentlemen, I will probably say that, not by a landslide, no, just a couple of points, I would probably give the winning hand to Nintendo, to be quite honest. And here's the thing, that winning hand would have flipped at the drop of a fucking hat if they showed Spider-Man 2. Or maybe not even Spider-Man 2, if they showed Bloodborne Remaster, 60 FPS, 4K, better textures and all that stuff. If they added that into the state of play, I probably would have switched on over and said, nope, state of play 1. But without that or Spider-Man 2, and yeah, the God of War stuff was cool, and it's cool to see that the trailer also ended in further confirmation that they're dead set on November 9th being the date. It was very neck and neck, but at the end I was like, I think Nintendo just had a little bit more stuff. Just a little bit more stuff for me to look at and go, yo, that was cool, that was cool, that was cool. Yeah, usual ports, yada yada. But that was cool, that was cool. And then with the state of play, I feel like it was just a little too short for me to leave me think about anything else outside of just the God of War stuff. Some of the Japanese stuff looked interesting, but what really kind of made me open my eyes even further was the God of War trailer. So yeah, I would probably say I would have to give it to the state of play. And here's the thing, despite their insistfulness on that November 9th date, you know me, I'm the skeptic, and as such, I will say until I see that tweet from Santa Monica Studios saying that the game has gone gold, which they have not done, anything can happen. That's all I'll say. Anything can happen. We shall see. Whew, guys, I'm exhausted. This was a crazy episode. Crazy things happened this week that forced me to, like I said, retire some stories, push them off to the side, brush over through the intro. And because of that, I feel like I need to brush over through the outro because I have to edit this thing and get it up and running. So thank you guys for listening to episode 7 of the season 5 of the DarkspiderCast. Like I said, a lot of shit went down here. If you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube, let me know in the comments below. Who do you think won? Nintendo or PlayStation as far as those two presentations on the same day? Do you think it was intentional? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys are listening to this on podcast platforms, let the system know by hitting the thumbs up or the heart or whatever liking system they use. If you're listening on YouTube, again, hit the thumbs up or thumbs down. Subscribe for more episodes coming up in the future. Otherwise, check out the description to hit me up over on Twitter or on Instagram, or simply just search me up at DarkspiderDavid. Links could also be found for the website, DarkspiderDavid.com, or the main channel dedicated to all things Batman and Spider-Man. Again, link in the description. Otherwise, guys, I bid you all farewell, take care, and tune in next week. Peace.